On this week's Q&A episode of Dealing the Cards, we'll address your questions, including things like how the Cardinals could get creative with lineup construction over the next few weeks, how the Cardinals farm system got as thin as it is currently in the first place, and plenty of hypotheticals and questions surrounding how the Cardinals could handle this year's trade deadline. We'll address all of these on this Q&A episode of Dealing the Cards. Welcome back in. On Fridays, we do Q&A episodes over here on the channel. We go live twice a week, usually on Sundays and Wednesdays. But on Fridays, we like to do these for members' questions in our Discord. You can join the membership on our YouTube channel. It's questions submitted on as comments on YouTube videos, on Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Because we always appreciate your guys' support. And again, we're not saying that we have all the answers on these, and we appreciate all the other perspectives out there, but we just want to answer questions or give our thoughts on things that you guys are curious about. We may not have covered necessarily on specific episodes. And so, well, here's the kind of progression we'll work through today. I'm going to start with some interesting ways that the Cardinals could get creative with their lineups and why we've maybe seen some specific roster moves. Today's Friday. And so the Cardinals start their series, the Washington Nationals, tonight. Ivan Herrera is expected to be activated and put on the active roster today, which is why Luken Baker was optioned to Memphis. Now see the Cardinals carrying three catchers on the roster. And so I think this correlates well with the question about how the Cardinals could get more out of their DH spot, which it seems like we have the idea of that. And then one of our listeners wanted to know, like, why are Burleson and Baker getting all the chances when you have a Thomas Saggese who could have played more often and is now in AAA? And thoughts on whether or not he could be an outfielder at some point. So anyways, I'm throwing this all into one question. I'll kind of answer them as we go through. But first of all, obviously we saw Luken Baker option to AAA already. I don't think, at least for now, I don't think that's going to be a long-term move. I think part of this is now you get Baker everyday plate appearances again. He can get back into a rhythm. He had the highest OPS against left-handed pitching out of all the Cardinals position players not named Ivan Herrera on the season that had 20 or more plate appearances. And so he was doing his job. It's just the problem was they didn't really need him that often, right? He started once, maybe twice a week against lefties, and they weren't really using him as a pinch hitter. They did the last game that he was in, right? They brought him in, he got that double, but other than that, he really hadn't been used as a pinch hitter very often. And so with Ivan Herrera coming back and there being a roster crunch, what this allows the Cardinals to do is to slowly give Ivan Herrera those catching duties back as he's healing from a knee injury. So Pages and Pozo can catch as often as they need to. I would expect them to start by getting Ivan Herrera as a catcher against righties. And then when a lefty's on the mound, he would for sure DH, and then Pozo or Pages would start that day because now that they don't have Baker, they don't have that clear right-handed DH option on those days. And then obviously we've seen Alec Burleson's bat start to heat up lately, and so I think he'll continue to be the DH against righties as much as possible. But if Ivan Herrera needs a DH, I think Burleson will get the short end of the stick there. Yeah, and I think Baker will be back soon to fill that role. I don't know if soon could be within the next few weeks once Herrera's back and feeling better. Maybe it's June, July. But again, he did his role. He did it well. They just don't really need it as much right now, and they could use the extra insurance catching depth-wise. In the case of Thomas Saggese, he's in a tricky spot because of the fact that they still want to give Nolan Gorman runway. And again, people can disagree with that and say, like, okay, like we've seen plenty of Gorman already. But this kind of goes the same way with Jordan Walker, too, where all off season long, they said, we want to give these guys an opportunity. And if you pull the plug on them in the second week of May, it's not really that kind of runway they talked about all off season. It just isn't. And so you can agree or disagree with the fact that they should earn that runway, but they're committing to the plan, and I'm fine with it. I do think Ollie Marmol's been open on KMOX a couple weeks ago that the runway has its limits. And so it's not like, hey, no matter what happens, these guys will for sure be on the roster and playing every day, Gorman and Walker. With how bad it looks specifically like Walker right now, and even really Gorman, because he just has no power, even though he's gotten better with not striking out as much, not as much swing and miss. He's drawing more walks. Those are encouraging things, but the power's been zapped. I do think we probably see both of these guys, even at the rates that they're struggling right now, through the month of May and probably into late June before a move could be made. If they make incremental improvements or really take steps forward, then I think they're on the roster all year. If it gets even worse than what it is right now, then that could be accelerated a little bit. But again, like I'll use Walker as the example. If the Cardinals send him down right now, they're basically sending him down to Memphis for the third straight year within weeks of the time they did it the last 2 years. And so it's really no different than what they've done the last few years. So I find them sticking to the plan. So Saggese, he's in a weird spot because of that. If he's on the roster, he really doesn't play much with as many guys that there are back. When Ivan Herrera is cleared to catch and they feel comfortable with him, well, I mean, he seems like he's cleared to catch, but when they feel comfortable with him catching consistently again, there's maybe a role that Thomas Saggese could have on the roster because he could DH, he could play second base on those days against lefties, he could back up, win at shortstop, all that. But again, they want him playing consistently, and so that's why he's in Memphis right now. I do think, to this question's point, though, get him in the outfield when you can and see how much he could do it, because that would just help get his bat into the lineup more often. If you know you could stick him in left field or right field, second base, third base, shortstop, it's like Brendan Donovan, right? Like that guy can play anywhere you need him to. And I'm not saying Thomas Saggese needs to become Brendan Donovan defensively in terms of the same value and like the same output. But if he can play a lot of those different positions with that bat, that increases his chances of getting into the lineup more often. And so I'd love them to see them consider doing something like that. So another question we had today was kind of how did the Cardinals farm system get so thin? Were there misses on some of the pitching prospects when it comes to McGreevy, Graceffo, Thompson, Jerpy? I'll leave the Kareem question for Birds on the Farm at some time where they can kind of go back and grade some of the 2023 trades, because I think they probably have some interesting thoughts about that. But outside of just, we've talked about the player development stuff before, so let's leave that in the center as like the big obvious thing, that the player development woes, the lack of staffing and investment that the Cardinals have had down there for years, and I guess at least like the pulling away of funding to that area to put toward the big league roster was a big impact of that. But then there's also other ramifications of moves, like when they signed Wilson Contreras and Sonny Gray, they lost second round picks in consecutive years, and those are more recent things that hurt the farm system, right? So like this hurts their strength today in 2026, 2027, 2028, where those prospects could have been impactful players or impactful pieces to that system that just aren't there because they missed out on it. Not critiquing at all signing Wilson Contreras or Sonny Gray. Those are great signings. It's just the reality of when you sign a guy who has a qualifying offer attached to them. You also go back, and in the mid 2010s, they had some penalties because of the hacking scandal. Again, the draft philosophy that's been mentioned here, where they've picked a Zach Thompson in the first round, Michael McGreevy, who again we're really excited about right now, but he's not like an ace or top end starter. And even getting a major league starter out of the first round, you should be happy about. So I'm not really critiquing that one, but you've seen Cooper Jerpy be injured, right? Like Tink Hence he's a top prospect, but the health has been an issue. Jordan Walker was a first round pick and it was supposed to be a top prospect in all of baseball, and he's not really working out. Jordan Gorman is a first round pick, not really working out. Gordon Graceffo, I think, was a second or third round pick and might be a reliever at this point. Like, it has been pretty disappointing. And so I think part of the reason the system got thin is they didn't make a ton of aggressive trades in recent years, but they would send some different pieces out in trades. They lost some draft picks from comp signings, and then the player development woes, right? And you're picking toward the back end of the first round consistently, which is not an excuse. Like teams like the Dodgers and Rays figure it out. So Cardinals don't have an excuse there, but it factors in, right? So that's where I'd say a lot of like those woes come through. But anyways, we'll get into some of the trade deadline talk here. But first, I want to thank one of our newer sponsors of the podcast, and that's Underdog Sports.
The Deal in the Cards podcast is proud to be partnered with Underdog Sports, our favorite place to play fantasy games. You're now eligible to play in Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and 37 other U.S. states. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can win 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with our promo code CARDS to claim your first free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries.
Click that link in the bio if you're on YouTube, or I think it's on Spotify as well, and you can use our promo code CARDS to get a first free pick'em on Underdog and a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So the rest of our questions today are more trade deadline related, and I know we all know this, but I'm going to say it out loud again. It's May 9th. So 2.5 months until the trade deadline. So there's plenty of room for things to change. And so take this all with a grain of salt. So we'll kind of go through these one by one because there are a variety of different questions, which I think are interesting. And the first one was kind of a thought exercise that they said from the beginning, but they talked about one of the benefits of Mo staying in the Pobo role this year. It's something we've talked about, is he can make some of those moves that fans maybe not some fans or a lot of fans might not be excited about. Although I do think most people would agree that a Nolan Arenado trade is not crazy, and I think most people would welcome it, but the front office might, or an ownership might feel different. And so having Mo be the one to execute that rather than Hein Bloom. But he brought up this idea of, okay, well, could the Cardinals, if like he said specifically if Gorman or Walker are struggling at the deadline, could the Cardinals, and they're in the wild card hunt, could they try to do a change of scenery type trade? And some of the examples are thrown out, like Reed Detmers for Gorman or Walker for Robert, which both of those I don't think would happen. I think the Angels and White Sox would say no to those. So, but I'll address that idea. But the point brought up was, could it be similar to a Colby Rasmus, where the Cardinals in 2011 were in the playoff hunt and they took a former top prospect who is a little bit disappointing and obviously had some issues in the clubhouse, and they flipped him and turned him into value. They turned him into like Edward Jackson and Octavio Dotel and a couple different relievers and Corey Patterson, like a bunch of small pieces that help them make the playoffs and go on a run in October. So could the Cardinals try to get a bunch of smaller pieces or change of scenery guys using a Nolan Gorman or Jordan Walker to do so? I think the examples you gave are a little too aggressive for what the Cardinals can actually do with Walker or Gorman, assuming they're struggling this bad by the deadline. I mean, if they're looking a little bit more promising by the deadline, maybe you could do some kind of things, but it's important to go back and remember who Colby Rasmus was, right? Like, again, he was one of the top prospects in all baseball, like Jordan Walker. His rookie campaign was okay. It was a 2-WAR season, B-WAR season. He was 714 OPS, 90 OPS plus. Like, that's a pretty good, I mean, it's an okay rookie year. Then he has a great sophomore campaign where he's a 132 OPS plus guy, 859 OPS. He had 23 home runs and 66 RBIs that year in 144 games, a 3.6 win player for B-WAR. And then for 2011, he was still a 1.6 WAR player when the deadline came around. He was 8% above league average. Like, so Colby Rasmus was not struggling nearly as bad as a Jordan Walker or Nolan Gorman was. So I don't think those guys are great comps for it, but I get what the thought, and I'm sure you know that too. Like, I get the thought you're making there, where it's like, okay, well, could they still move them for pieces? I mean, maybe. It would take a potential, well, quote unquote buyer. One of those lateral move type teams or a rebuilding team that sees potential in Walker and Gorman and thinks they can turn them around. But I don't really think you're getting anything that's going to really help your major league roster all that much right now, unless it's kind of similar to what they did with Dylan Carlson last year, and you're getting a borderline reliever, like a okay guy in the back of your bullpen. Maybe they do that with Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker. I don't know if I really see that. I think Gorman's the more likely guy of the two right now that they could do something with. I think Walker, even if it's really bad this year, I think they probably send him to AAA, and then he comes back next year in a role similar to what Gorman was, where it's like, okay, now this is your fourth big league season, and if you don't figure it out this year, you're done. And he's like similar to Dylan Carlson. I just don't really see a role where they give up on him yet, fully give up on him yet in terms of trading, because it's like you're probably getting cents on the dollar at this point. So I think you just bank on potentially him turning around, but you don't bank on it as in he's getting every day at bats anymore. He's got to work for it. So I think it's a really interesting scenario that the Cardinals could consider at the deadline. I just don't really know how many teams are all that interested in it. They're not going to give the Cardinals something really interesting in return for that. So, yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents with that. The rest of the questions really have to deal with what kind of players the Cardinals would be shopping at the deadline or on the block, and potentially what could they do if they're trying to add to the roster and all of that. And so I'll give some thoughts on that here in a second as well. But again, I want to thank another one of our sponsors, and that's 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They've been an awesome sponsor of the podcast for quite some time now. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard and all that, and they're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 10 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards and the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league. You got to go check them out. They're awesome. They have so much stuff going on over there. We know many of you already shop there and get your own cards from there. So let us know if you've been there. Send us pictures of things you've snagged while you're there. Let them know we sent you. And yeah, thanks to 314 as always for being an awesome sponsor of the podcast. And so finishing up with some of the trade deadline specific questions today. So there's questions about like if they're buying at the deadline, what are they looking for? They're selling at the deadline, what kind of players are available. and kind of looking at like what in general, like if the Cardinals are trying to contend, they're probably looking for cost controlled or sorry, they're probably gonna have to use cost controlled players to go get what they want to add to the roster. So what players would the Cardinals consider moving in that scenario? So I'm just gonna break it up into categories of what I see. I think, and also it's really hard right now because the Cardinals are a 500 team and in the NL Central race. And so if it's a very similar vibe at the deadline, they're 500 and they're in the race, then they could go multiple directions or they could do multiple types of things, right? Like they could trade away Nolan Arenado and Ryan Helsley while keeping Eric Fetty and adding a reliever to replace Helsley, who's not as good, but that won't cost as much. Like they could do something like that. They could sell and buy. If they're way out of it, they're going to sell. If they're leading the NL Central by 5-6 games at that point, then I don't know if they sell as much as we would have probably anticipated they would. I don't know how much they add either. So if I think of who's on the block or who potentially could be moved, it's the same guys in the offseason, right? It's Nolan Arenado, it's Eric Fetty, it's Stephen Matz, it's Ryan Helsley, and now Phil Maton as well, right? Now, how likely each of those guys moved, it really depends on how much they're in the race and what teams are offering. I think Arenado is a guy that, unless their plans have changed significantly by the time July comes around, I think he's a guy that if they get a good offer on, they're going to move regardless because they want to move that money. And obviously, they're trying to do it all offseason long and just couldn't get it done. And with the way he's playing right now, you would think there's teams are more interested in B. They could hopefully get a little bit more in return than they were hoping before. So Arenado is a guy I think that they're probably going to move or would want to move. Not probably going to move, but Arenado is one that I think they would love to move if they can. Helsley's another one that I think they've always in the back of their mind been like, we're probably going to move at the deadline. Again, Jeff Jones had a piece last weekend about this that I thought was interesting of just that he was like, hey, if the Cardinals are going to contend and if they're going to make a run, it's going to be because of the young guys and they're going to commit to the play that he thinks they've been having that's eventually moving Ryan Helsley at the deadline, kind of no matter where they're at. And again, if I were the Cardinals, that's what I'd be looking to do. I would be looking to for sure move Nolan Arenado, Ryan Helsley, and Eric Fetty at the deadline because I think, especially in the case of Helsley, you can get something in return that's going to be really helpful for the future. Arenado, you're moving money and potentially getting something, not as much as you would for Helsley. And then Eric Fetty, it really depends on how he's pitching at that point, but we always know pitching is always at a premium at the deadline. Phil Maton's a guy that they should potentially shop as well because of how good he's been this year. And again, he's a rental guy, and I know that they're trying to contend. But again, if they're in it, I think they'd be more likely to trade Helsley than Maton because Maton's not going to get you as much and can still be productive while Helsley could get you more in return. And I just don't think that's a kind of guy you need on your roster when you're a fringe contender as an elite closer. Now, the question about what kind of prospects or young players the Cardinals would be willing to deal, I would bet none. I just don't see a world where the Cardinals go into this deadline and, well, I guess at least they're not going to move those guys for a rental, right? Like, I don't see the Cardinals getting into the market where they're trading for, man, I'm trying to think of one of the free agent starters this offseason or bats. This obviously the Red Sox are going to be in it, but like if the Red Sox fell the race, the Cardinals wanted a big bat. Alex Bregman is an opt out. Like they're not trading for him. They're not doing that. They're not trading for a cheap rental either of a guy that's like who doesn't have a big contract yet and is going to go after their first big contract. Like there's no way. Now, like I think Pablo Lopez has a few years of control left, and it's like, I mean, maybe could they do something like that if the price is right? Like potentially, but I doubt that too. I just do not see the Cardinals moving prospects or young players at their core because, like, we could say, oh, they could trade Gorman and Walker and Burleson to go get one of these. Well, okay, like Burleson's been interesting lately, but like Gorman and Walker are not fetching you a cost control player that you really like right now, and they're really not going to fetch you a worthy rental either right now. So I just do not see the Cardinals parting with prospects or young talent to get things done. Maybe things significantly change by the deadline and they look like a legit contender and Mo wants to go out with a bang on his last year and they're willing to do that. But they've said all offseason that when it comes to the long-term play of this team, Bloom's going to have a significant role in that. And let's be honest, Bloom's not going to get a lot of credit for how the Cardinals do this year. But he will be wearing whatever ramifications happen in 2026 and beyond. So I don't know how much he cares about trying to make a fringe run this year as much as Mo would care. Oh my gosh, my dog jumped on my desk. Anyways, now that I took care of that, So yeah, I agree with some of the assessments here, and I think the general assessment from fans is that I don't see the Cardinals being aggressive buyers. I think the world where they buy and add at the deadline is if they add their own Phil Matons. Like again, obviously they sign one this offseason, but if like those type of players that are available from other teams at the deadline, like they could add small pieces like that don't cost you much. I think they could do something like that. I just don't see them making bigger moves than that because they want to maintain the future right now, and they are a fringe contender. But again, things could change between now and then. So, anyways, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments as usual. Drop any questions you have for future episodes. Let us know if there's any topics you want us to address in upcoming podcasts or again on this Q&A episode series. We appreciate the support as always. Thanks for tuning into the Dealing Cards podcast. We'll see you guys on Sunday.